Okay.
All right, welcome everyone to the video for this week. So today we're just going to basically do a little bit of a riff on Bitcoin, just kind of see where we end up, just have a little talk, because I know it's something that people are interested in hearing about. And I think just having our perspectives of being in the space and just talking kind of casually about it, nothing too technical, is going to be coming up today. Might do, but hopefully not too complicated.
We'll try to
Um,
steer away from that.
yeah. So maybe we should start with I don't think we've gone to like what drew us to Bitcoin in the first place. We can kind of start there.
Yeah. I mean, I started in Bitcoin 2019. I had heard about it sort of, but I didn't really know much about it at all. But again, it was like sort of a gut instinct that this is something new, novel, and powerful. But I didn't really know how to access it because I didn't know the space at all. But then I heard on the radio that PayPal was starting to sell Bitcoin. And they were also selling Ethereum and Litecoin, and that was it. And I had a PayPal account. So it was like a really easy way for me to access the space. So I just bought some Bitcoin and Ethereum, but mainly Bitcoin. And sorry. Um, and then I think actually it was maybe through you. And yeah, that was sort of my entry. And I just love the space. Yeah, that's how I got in. And I've been in ever since, and I'm totally in love with it. It excites me emotionally, intellectually, instinctually. Um, so that's pretty good. I wish I had a boyfriend like that.
So my journey into crypto and Bitcoin was really through my partner, Adam, who to be honest, actually, it happened before that. So a couple of years, I would say it was probably in like 2016 or 2017. I remember hearing about it on a podcast and I was really, really interested. I was like, oh, I really want to get into this. It just sounded like up my street just to have something different, the kind of different type of investment. And I kind of what I'd heard, I believed in, but I had no idea how to access that. So I remember Googling like how to buy Bitcoin, and it just was like, it just felt too complicated. I was like, I actually don't know how to do this. So I didn't pursue it at all. And that was like, it popped out of my mind. And then when I was with Adam, he introduced me to Bitcoin because it's something he was really interested in. And at first I was quite not resistant. I just wasn't like particularly that drawn to it. I just wanted to sort of get on with what I was doing. And then over time, he would talk about it a bit more. And I thought, I actually really need to understand this better and to see what the hype is. What is, what is it about Bitcoin that people are really inspired by? So I ended up going on a kind of big exploration, but I basically just wanted to kind of put my full focus on what is Bitcoin, like what is this thing that people are talking about. And as soon as I started doing research and I started watching a lot of the videos, I went deeper and deeper and deeper. And I was like, this is so interesting. This is so inspiring. And because by then it had been out for quite a long time, and had been used in lots of different ways and had been tested in lots of different ways, all of those kind of initial concerns that maybe it was going to go to nothing or maybe it could be hacked hadn't played out. And so I was really interested to see how this technology had really sustained over time. And I realized that it was something that could really impact the world and was something that I really wanted to pursue. I realized that there was finally another alternative to the financial system that we have, and Bitcoin was it. And I just thought, for investment purposes, I would like to be a part of it, but also for my own, my sense of like direction of where I want to put my money was Bitcoin. And it's interesting because both of us come from a very environmental background. We're very into nature and into the earth. And I think for some people, there's a sort of juxtaposition between, you know, wanting this digital currency, and especially one that does have impact on, you know, or does use electricity. And so it's really interesting for both of us to recognize how powerful it is as a technology, that we stand behind it, and that we are in support of it above the system that we have, because we see what it delivers, like the potential that it brings, and the good that it can actually do to the environment, and to you know, the generation of renewable energies in order to start to alleviate some of that pressure. But that's all kind of additional. But it's just interesting because both of us, that's one of the kind of arguments that people have, or criticisms about Bitcoin, and yet both of us are coming from a very environmental background, and yet we are still very inspired by it, and see that it's the future.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, in the future, we'll do a video on,
Mhm.
we dive a little bit more into Bitcoin, crypto, and environmental impacts.
Yes. But if I said to you, Anja, like, what is Bitcoin?
I mean, for me, I like to think about sort of the historical element in terms of money. Like, so for me, it's a new generation of currency, of money. Looking at money, I mean, we've had paper money for a long time. It's sort of, and it evolved over time from where you were like exchanging maybe shoes for a sheep, you know, and how that was such a complicated kind of exchange. And then there was then representations of currency, of money, shells, you know, and then it was gold, and it was gold coins, and then it became paper. And we've sort of, I think we're in a time, especially after COVID, where it is time to revolutionize our lives, our perspectives of planet Earth, and in ourselves in the universe, and currency.
So for me, I would say Bitcoin. I mean, I guess I will go more, or what was it built to address? And like Anja was just saying, how our system of money has moved through all of these different kind of forms. And now we have paper money. We also do have some coins still, but quite a lot of the movement of money we do is online. So moving from my bank to, say, Anja's bank. So if I needed to pay Anja $50, I would have to send that from my bank. Now, what happens with that process is that I have to trust my bank to hold my $50. I then have to trust my bank to send that $50 to Anja's bank. Anja has to trust her bank. And then I have to, and those two banks kind of trust each other. And we have to trust our banks that they're not going to take our money, or they're not going to spend our money, and that they have the money there available. And there's all of these extra steps in order to get the money from me to another person, from me to Anja, from me to the shop. You have to go through the banks. We always have to go through a third party. And so that third party, that bank, takes a cut of the money I'm sending. And we need to trust that bank, and that bank can shut us out. So if it deems that we do something that it doesn't feel is appropriate, then it can block us from accessing our money. So what Bitcoin does is it's called a peer-to-peer financial like network. So what that means is I can send Bitcoin from me to Anja directly, from me to a shop directly. I don't go through a bank. So technically there are no fees, although there are small fees in terms of sending that money over the Bitcoin network, but there are other networks also that make it a bit cheaper, but it's certainly not as expensive in any way than what it would be if you go through a bank. It's also, and that was the main aim, was to make it very low in fee. So you're sending from one person to another with very low fee. But the issue in doing that is if I was going to send money to Anja, then how do I know she is going to, how do I know she's not going to say, oh, you never sent me the money? You've got to send it again. Because I'm just relying on trust, right? I'm like, I have to trust Anja that she is going to tell me that she definitely received the money that I sent her. And she then has to trust me that I'm definitely going to send the money. So what Bitcoin did was it created a trustless system. You don't have to trust a bank, and you don't have to trust the person that you're sending money to, and you don't have to trust the person who's sending the money. So how it does that is it's basically like a ledger. So it's an online system of every transaction that's ever happened, and it can't be basically denied or changed. So because of that, and it's protected through cryptography. So because of that, in order for me to send Bitcoin to Anja, it knows how much Bitcoin I have because it's on the ledger. And then when I send Bitcoin to Anja, it puts that on the ledger, and Anja receives that money, and it then updates the ledger with how much she's got. So there is no need to trust anybody. We just have a ledger that documents every single transaction. And so it basically is digital currency that can be sent person to person. And so that means that, and it also can't be shut down or taken from you or intercepted. So that just makes it really powerful, and that's why it differs from our traditional system where you have to rely on banks and their kind of instruction and their holding essentially of your money. So it's basically like you are your own bank and you hold that money. So for the kind of the initial way of it being described was Bitcoin is digital cash. It moves from person to person without an intermediary. Did I explain that well?
I think, yes, you did. And I was just thinking about that, there are so many fees associated with the banking system. And so going to cryptocurrency, you're taking on that. You don't have those fees. You're taking on more responsibility, but you're also gaining a lot more power, and safety in a way, because a bank can, if you want to send your money to your mother living far away in a different country, and she relies on that money, and if suddenly we go to war with that country or whatever, like let's say in the USA, that bank can deny you from sending that money to that person, or if they in any way suspect it. And this could have a huge impact on you if you can't send that money. So the bank is this gatekeeper that can be detrimental to you if they don't agree with, how you live your life. And so crypto then gives you that freedom. Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah. And
Especially as we're becoming more international, we're becoming more earthlings, then that sense of nationalism is sort of slowly, those barriers or those walls are sort of becoming much more porous. And so there's a lot more communication all around the world. I think especially with Twitter and Facebook and all that, it's those, I think, and I think we're much quicker as a community, building community all around the world as individuals than these large institutions can even be, because those large institutions are so much that has to happen in order to change. And so the banks are really lagging behind in terms of what's happening, I think, with community.
Yeah, completely. Because it's really nice to think of it like that, is that in a way money is connection. So with Bitcoin, money is connection because you're connecting with each person individually, and you can actually send micropayments. So there is like a podcast platform or a music platform called Fountain, and you can listen to your podcast that you like, and you can send a micropayment in Bitcoin to any of the people that you enjoy listening to. And it's just like, it's making this direct connection with that person in that moment. And on Twitter as well, you can send these micropayments. And it's like connecting specifically with the person that you want to, and you know it's not going through anyone else, it's just going directly to that person. And so you're supporting community, but you're using kind of money as connection. And Bitcoin allows that because you can send part of a Bitcoin. You know, it's not like you can't send a quarter of a cent, you know, but you can send like micro payments, tiny amounts to different people. So every time you clicked on something, it could send a micro payment, which just allows the money to flow, allows the Bitcoin to flow. A little bit like what we were talking about the other day with the money as energy. And when you were just speaking to that piece about sending money abroad, because each country, like the way that it's been defined is in these sort of pockets of, you know, borders that are arbitrary. You know, it's in a way like we are all human beings, we all live on the same planet, and yet, you know, just to kind of connect, to move, to send money is so difficult. And if you're in the West, we have better systems of sending money to one another, although there are fees. But when you're sending money to particularly poorer countries where their currency is not as strong, they get so heavily charged. And those countries have to have a strong, you know, a heavy deposit or a heavy amount of US dollars in order to kind of meet a lot of these, you know, the money being sent across. So it just kind of perpetuates the US having control over these countries. And so with Bitcoin, again, if we're all with the same currency, it's borderless. It doesn't matter where you are. You can send that money across the world. You can send that Bitcoin across the world, and there are no high fees. And different, you know, countries have where you happen to be born. Okay, well, now it's going to cost me so much money to send my money home, the money I've earned. Whereas with Bitcoin, it avoids that. And like you say, with banks, they have so much control, but they are under the control of their governments, and their governments can enforce certain things on the banks to say, you know, that person can't access their money now. Whereas no one can shut down Bitcoin. They can ban it from a country, but Bitcoin is global. Like, you can't shut the network down. So you can access it in different ways, but you can always move country and access it. There's always a way to access Bitcoin. It can't be stopped, basically. Yeah. But I loved, like, I love the idea of that, just that connecting, the connections that Bitcoin brings.
Yeah, it's funny. I had that in my mind because I want to get a flag for my house. And I was like looking for some flag that represented planet Earth. And so apparently there's now this sort of tentative official flag logo that's sort of like the Olympics with the circles, but the circles are intertwined in sort of a spherical shape. And I just thought it was interesting that it's sort of, people are starting to think of planet Earth as one home. And that's sort of like the additional, I think, benefit or cool thing about Bitcoin. It's a global currency. Anybody anywhere can use it. And I feel like that's just seems to be the right direction financially, as we're moving that direction socially and politically, maybe.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think I wrote a dissertation a long time about this, about you know, moving towards, you know, global harmony, and and the only way that we can address, it was about the environment, so the only way we can address the environmental problems that we have is as a whole, as a global whole, recognizing that we share the air, we share the water. And again, like, those borders are arbitrary. You know, if one country is still polluting and the others aren't, the pollution is still taking place. And so everyone has to come together as a whole. And Bitcoin is just one of those. I think it's part of the reason why I love it so much, is it's one of those steps towards creating global unity. But it doesn't rely on trusting one another. Like, are you definitely going to do what you said you're going to do? It's trustless. It's just that we all agree with whoever is using it is in agreement with it. And the way that the money transfers is like, you don't have to rely on trust. So, but it's creating unity. It's creating something that we are all part of. And it's almost the first thing I can think of. I mean, maybe the internet is one of them as well, but it's just like this thing that is like taking on that global perspective, which is something that we really need to start moving into, is that we are all one, we are all part of the same earth. And you know, there is no one that is controlling Bitcoin. And that's the thing, is like, how can we come together and create change, but having no single person in charge of that with their own, you know, interpretation or their own ideas or their own ego? It's, you know, it's kind of egoless. And I think that's a really, really powerful, really, really powerful thing for us as we move into the future, to see that we can all be connected, particularly around something as important as money.
I was just thinking about, in terms of all being connected, my dad is overseas, and I've got him into crypto as well now. And so it's sort of, it adds this wonderful dynamic conversation between us via like WhatsApp, about, oh, where's Bitcoin? Where's this? How's the market doing? And so it's sort of interesting how it actually, for me personally, created this sort of new dynamic in terms of conversation with my dad. And my mom is kind of starting to get into it as well. So, and you know, and so I'm trying to explain to them what it is.
I think the relation, I mean, I think there is something about when people do understand it or they get inspired by it, there is a real connecting force, because you kind of know that you're on the same page as someone, or that you're thinking about, you know, the future or life in a different way, or that you're just kind of, you're forward thinking, or you're kind of visionarily thinking. You know, it's almost like it doesn't matter if it works. It's like that capacity to be like, that's exciting, let's go for it. Because my mom was the same. Like, she's 78 and I got her into crypto. Cool. And she was the first person. I spoke to so many people about crypto and Bitcoin. When I got into it, I was so inspired by it. And at that point, it was between 8 and 10,000. And I was just, you know, and Ethereum was, I think, 150. And I was just thinking, I was like, this is something that is really important. And I was saying to lots of people, I was like, you know, it's time. I really feel it's time to get into Bitcoin. I really feel like this is the future. And kind of regardless of how much it was, because like, I'm not too worried about the value. But it was just really interesting that my mom she's like, oh yeah, I'm in. And at that point she was like, what, 74, 75. And most of my peers were looking at me like, oh no, I'm not touching that. And she was really well rewarded for that. So I felt really good for her decision. But she was so excited to kind of be a little bit on the edge and like be so far ahead in terms of her own peer group. She's like, oh, I'm like a millennial. So it's really nice to kind of find something that does connect. You know, you can see the thread of what you've come from too. Like, I'm like, oh, that's where that kind of innovative edge comes from in myself, because my mom has that and your dad has that.
True. Yes. Oh, my mom so had that. Yeah. Or has that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the people that, you know, when you go on Twitter, sometimes it can be a little bit male centric, or like kind of,
for sure, yeah,
techie boys. But when the women,
they're so cute.
They are cute, and it's quite funny. You actually are really good at finding really funny memes, and I enjoy those immensely. But the women I've met, like through teaching and just through when putting it out there, whoever is attracted, oh my God, like I've made such amazing friendships because of crypto, because of Bitcoin. And that feels so inspiring for me as well. Like the people that we are physically being connected with in reality, because of this technology, it's just amazing. Yeah. Oh, we haven't actually said who created it.
Well, we're not exactly sure, but we are kind of.
What's the name? Who are they? Or who is the person?
Oh my God. Nakamoto. No, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yes.
I haven't really actually verbalized that name, so it might, but I've read it or seen that reference for a long time. Okay, so I named him. You kind of unpack that slightly, please.
Him. So
Him,
yeah.
yeah.
So when Bitcoin was launched, it was launched by way of a white paper. So being kind of released to the world of this is what Bitcoin is, and this is what we want it to do. And then kind of came the first mining of a Bitcoin, which is basically how Bitcoin is produced. But that is too technical, so we're not going to go into that. But the first Bitcoin was mined based like from a kind of computer program, and then everybody else who wanted to be part of it could download that computer program and begin to mine their own Bitcoin. That's how the decentralization works. But the person who released that white paper just signed off as Satoshi Nakamoto. And we have no idea, they remained anonymous to this day, and we have no idea if it's one person or several people. And from reports, and there are certain people that we know very likely did work on it. And so it sounds like it was a group of people. But still to this day, they have remained anonymous. And it's one of the most powerful things that they did and continue to do. And it's absolutely pivotal, really, to the nature of Bitcoin, is because it doesn't actually affect the code, like it doesn't affect the program, like it's released. It's basically perpetually anybody can download the Bitcoin program and mine Bitcoin, although now it's much more difficult because of how much Bitcoin has been mined and how difficult it is now to mine Bitcoin. But essentially, if with other coins where we know the person that created it, although they don't have this, they say they don't have as much sway over those currencies. The fact is that just like Elon Musk or anyone else, when you know someone is connected to something and they do something big or bad or whatever it is, then it really affects the technology. And so not just for the decentralization, not just for the kind of the fact that it's just been gifted to the world to use, but really, but also for the fact that it's not manipulated by a person or an idea. It's not associated to anyone. So that sense of anonymousness is so pivotal. And it when you start to understand what Bitcoin is and how it works, and the fact that the creators are anonymous, it's so clever. I think that's what I keep coming back to every time I come back to kind of Bitcoin and how it works. I'm just like, it's so clever. Every piece was thought about perfectly. And yeah, it's really
I love
cool.
also how you said it was gifted to the world. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a great way of looking at it, that it was a gift to us. And I think that's exactly how it was meant in a way. Oh, and if anybody wants to find out more about the white paper, you just have to Google Bitcoin white paper and it'll show up.
Yeah.
You can dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
I think there's I think it's bitcoin.org, which was a website that was set up after the time, but that like by people who are interested in Bitcoin, who basically kind of help to support you if you're interested in Bitcoin. And I think you can find the white paper there as well. I think it's bitcoin.org. But for beginners, the white paper is a bit complicated, but hopefully we made sense of, they do talk about Bitcoin being a peer-to-peer. Yeah. But I think it says like peer-to-peer cashless system, I think it is, of digital money. So we talked about the peer-to-peer, and then you'll hear decentralized and distributed. And so hopefully there's a bit of understanding around that now. But when you said gift back, I think that's so, it like kind of gave me chills because it was gifted. And I think that people forget that. I think that we get so caught up in what is the price doing, or okay, but is it a scam? You know, people are constantly fussing, but they kind of forget that this was a gift. It's like sometimes you can just sit back and go, this is wonderful. It's a funny thing about the human psyche, and maybe it's the way that we are so connected to news and bad news. You know, it's like but always trying to find the negative. And actually, it's almost, it feels almost ungrateful that there's not enough people just being like, thank you. Whoever you are, thank you. This is beautiful, a beautiful tool, a beautiful currency, a beautiful system. And we use it gratefully because it's free, right? Like, I mean, to buy Bitcoin costs you money, but the whole system is free. It's literally been given, like those people who created it, years and years of work, just gifted.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes me think I myself need to be more grateful every time I think, because I forget it too. You know, it's so easy because you get caught up in the politics, in the price. But always coming back to this gratefulness, I think it's really grounding. Thank you for reminding me that. Yeah.
Yeah, I reminded myself, I think, too, because that feels really important suddenly. And it's also, you know, I'm really looking forward to the day actually when the price stabilizes. And I think that's going to come quite far down the line, because I think it's really about like mass adoption where the ultimate price is set. But I look forward to that time. So we're not always arguing about price or worrying about it. And it's great if you want to make money, you know, and trade it, but that's not really the purpose of Bitcoin. You know, the purpose was to create a new system of currency. And yeah, we're squabbling about how we can make more money out of that system. Or how can we make more money out of the price, rather than just recognizing that, you know, it's a gift and we can still send it to one another. You know, we can use it in the way that it was designed to be used. Or invested for like the longer term if you do think it's going up. But I definitely attribute some of my Bitcoin to being able to spend it, to send it to other people, because I want to kind of participate in that movement and not just to be in it for making money, you know, or in it for the long term of making money. I do hold it long term because also I don't want to fully sell it, because I believe in it, even if it never goes up in price. I believe in it. I want Bitcoin. But I think it's also important to use it to kind of feed the growth, and keep appreciating what we've been given, and use it for what it was, you know, supposed to be used for.
Yeah, and I mean, more opportunities are showing up in terms of how to use, being able to use it. You can use it at many places. I mean, I think even Walmart, you can use it. Or maybe it was Walmart has ATM machines to buy Bitcoin.
Oh,
I
cool.
think that was it. But you know, McDonald's, Gucci, you know, more, and Starbucks. These are places, maybe not in all countries, but the companies themselves are moving towards that in terms of accepting Bitcoin as a payment. So the opportunities are there to use it, even when you're purchasing. I mean, people have purchased houses with Bitcoin, cars with Bitcoin, you know, so it's happening.
What would you say to someone who is like doubting whether they should buy Bitcoin?
Oh, that there's a set amount of Bitcoin that will ever be mined. So it won't be like the dollar that you can always print as much as you want. So which makes it, what does it make? That makes it inherently very valuable, and the price would never go down unless I think the only way Bitcoin crashes is if the internet crashes. And then if that happens, we have bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. Exactly. And so yes, if the internet like turned off and never turned back on, then, you know, you're right, there are bigger problems. But it's also, you know, in terms of distribution, like distributing your own you know, your own value. You know, it's like, okay, well, if you put everything in Bitcoin and the internet crashes, I mean, if you had everything in your bank and the internet crashes, you'd be exactly the same. Everything that they've got, all your, you know, everything they've got on you to know how much money you have is on their computer system. So if the computers crash, you've lost your money anyway. You know, having a property or having, you know, other things to distribute, it's not just, you know, it's not just the one thing. But that argument works for both things. And we never say that about our money in the bank. We never go, oh God, if the internet went down, we'd lose all our money, which we would. So it's interesting that we just apply that to Bitcoin. And you're exactly right. So there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and so we've already mined over 19 million have been mined already. So we are 95% of Bitcoin has been mined. So it's out there in the world. So there's not that much left ultimately to be mined. Or to be produced, to be created. So that's why people think that Bitcoin will exceed in value over the years, because of that rarity. So yeah, very good answer to that question.
Okay. I don't think I have anything more to share about Bitcoin today. How about you? Do you have anything else you want to
No,
share?
I don't think I do either. I feel like we had a really good conversation, and it's nice, like this one, like we really had no plan. We just wanted to kind of show up and just chat about Bitcoin, and I think that felt really comfortable. So maybe we'll continue to do that. But we'd love to know how people found it, like how people are responding to our videos. So let us know. And yeah.
And you can find out more information at thecryptoethic.com. Or is it com.com?
I always do
Cryptoethic.com.
Yes.
That's
yeah, so you can find us there. So thanks, Anja, for the lovely conversation today.
Yeah, this was fun. It was nice seeing you.
You too.
And chatting.
Yeah, and chatting. And I will see you very soon. Bye.